The story begins when the Silver group faces a huge dragon, but even with all their strength, combined are no match for the beast. It whips its tail through the air with deadly accuracy, forcing the party members to jump to avoid the crushing blow. They counterattack with their most powerful attacks, but their weapons cannot pierce the dragon's thick hide. The dragon begins to gather energy to launch an attack, but the group's mage quickly raises a barrier to protect them. However, it is not strong enough to completely block the attack. When the shield breaks, the group's coast guard, Dennis, runs forward and uses his own body to protect the mage from the dragon's flames. A flame grazes the woman's arm, so Dennis, he quickly prepares a magic potion for her, advising her not to lose concentration, which relieves the group's vice captain, Katie, since Dennis always has their back. However, group leader Vigo doesn't seem too impressed by Dennis's display of compassion. He seems rather irritated. Vigo channels his frustration in a devastating attack that hits the dragon's eye directly, causing the massive creature to roar with pain. The wound sends the dragon into a state of complete rage, and it begins to attack everything around it with unpredictable movements. They manage to survive the chaotic assault, and Vigo shouts to his team to stay firm because they are the strongest group in the world. After that, the scene changes to the Ala meeting hall, Silver, where all the group members are gathered around a large table, except Katie. Dennis asks why Vigo called the meeting, so Vigo puts all the blame for his recent failure on him, claiming that if Dennis hadn't used his terrifying voice skill, the dragon wouldn't have fled and they would have been able to defeat it correctly. Dennis calmly reminds Vigo that it was he who ordered him to use that specific ability, but Vigo refuses, accepts responsibility for his orders, and continues to berate him for the outcome. Dennis reminds himself that his goal was to defeat the dragon and collect its rare materials to sell. But when the dragon suddenly entered a state in such a frenzy, it became very dangerous to continue the battle. Since most of them were already wounded and on the verge of defeat, Vigo ordered Dennis to use the intimidation ability, a terrifying voice that could scare enemies. Dennis followed the order and managed to make the dragon flee the battlefield. Although that decision ended in the mission's failure, it also saved the life of everyone. Dennis admits that at the time he was surprised by Vigo's good judgment, which was not typical of him, but now that he's seeing her true nature, he realizes she hasn't changed. Vigo flatly denies having given that order and even goes so far as to suggests that Dennis could have been sent to infiltrate their group as a spy for a rival team that wants, damaging the reputation of the silverware. He tells Dennis to leave the group, and none of the other members say anything to defend him because everyone is afraid of the captain. Vigo then gives a cruel speech about how Dennis was never worthy of being on their elite team because he's just a cook, and the Silver Battalion is made up of swordsmen, highly skilled priests, and mages. He notes that although both have reached level 99, a simple cook, as Dennis has no place among true warriors. Our Proto realizes that there is no point in staying like this, so he tells them to do whatever they want because they are no longer their problem. He leaves the room with his head held high, leaving the group behind, whom he had served faithfully for so long. A little later, Dennis walks through the crowded streets of the capital, thinking that he will also have to say goodbye to that place. A little girl accidentally bumps into him, and he releases his balloon, which begins to rise as she begins to cry. Dennis quickly catches the balloon and takes it to her, returns telling her that she shouldn't let go of the things that are important to her. Meanwhile, Vigo watches from afar as Denny walks away and smiles coldly as he prepares to put his real plan into action. Just when Dennis is about to leave the city, Kay appears and tries to stop him. Although the others don't recognize Dennis's role in the group, Katie knows that he played a key role as he was in charge of all the tasks, important things like medicine, alchemy, and food preparation. Our carrier believes that someone else will take over their responsibilities, but Tell explains that after he joined the group, his ability to explore more dangerous cliffs increased dramatically, and now people call them the strongest group in the world. She knows the rest of the team doesn't, realizes how much Dennis supports them from the shadows, but she doesn't know their true importance. Kate tries, desperately trying to convince Dennis to return, and when he fails, he asks him to at least cook one last supper for her, or to make them some lunches. Dennis can't believe that's all she thinks about, so Kay gets serious and asks him if he really plans to leave for good. When Dennis remains silent, Katie asks him what he's going to do with his life now. He explains that he's going to continue cooking because that's his job and reveals that he plans open his own restaurant. Katie doesn't want him to leave, so she tries to stop him again, claiming that it was she who found him and that he belongs to her. Dennis is grateful that Caddy invited him to the university, Silver, and reflects on how well they get along, which he believes is the reason why Vike expelled him, as was interested in Katie in a romantic way. Dennis says goodbye to Kai and walks away, and although she tries to order him to return using her authority as sub-captain, he doesn't even react because he knows that his life as an adventurer is over, but his life as a cook is just beginning. A few hours later, a surprise has just arrived at a new city where he's buying supplies to start his new restaurant. He discovers an incredible box in one of the stores that can cool anything without ice. And the salesperson explains that it's called a box of ice and is essential for every restaurant. You get emotional thinking about buying it, but then remember having read in your favorite book How to Open a Restaurant that you should avoid unnecessary purchases and keep your investment as low as possible. He decides not to buy the ice box because he can use ice magic instead. Knowing the book recommendations, buys an abandoned property, contacts distributors to acquire raw materials, and buys utensils necessary. After completing all these tasks, think how fun this process is and that it is getting more and more close to your dream. The next tip from the book is not to take on everything alone, as you won't be able to take care of everyone. Customers. So he decides to hire an assistant. Suddenly, he notices a crowd gathered around a slave trader who is selling a young girl who was once the daughter of a noble family. The merchant explains that her parents were defeated in a political power struggle and that she was exiled, and that is why ended up in that situation. The people gathered there find it hard to believe that he is really of the nobility because they don't. She looks refined at all, but they think she's cute and that when she grows up she'll be quite beautiful. Dennis would like do something to help her, but thinks that he can't save everyone and that if he got angry about every injustice he would manage to survive. But when he looks into the girl's eyes while she is alive, he remembers his own childhood when he was a orphan. The slave trader asks for bids, starting with 300,000 before others start bidding, and the figure quickly drops to 800,000. Dennis raises the bid to 1 million, believing he will win, but the seller he met before intervening with an offer of 1.5 million, saying that the girl is very pretty, so he will take her home and he will take good care of himself. Dennis notices that the guy looks perverted, but he tries not to judge people by their appearance, as he said he would take care of her. However, the crowd begins to murmur that this man is indeed a pervert and that the girl would be miserable if he took her away. Our plotter realizes that he can't allow that happen under any circumstances, so he raises his offer even higher. The bidding war continues until it exceeds the 5,000 ones, and we see that Dennis has finally bought it. He takes it to his new restaurant, although he is frustrated because he spent almost all his savings on the purchase of the girl, wanting to help her start over. He takes her to a store, buys her a new dress, and she gets dressed up. Later we see them walking back together, but the girl is walking quite slowly, so Dennis warns her that she will get lost if she doesn't walk closer to him. For a while, her warning comes true when she gets lost in the crowd. She can't find Dennis anywhere, sighed, and gets scared with all the people around her. But after a few minutes, Dennis appears in front of her without, surprised that he really got lost, and apologizes for walking too fast. They arrive at the restaurant and the girl asks Dennis why he bought it, and he mentions that there was no real reason, except that he remembered something from a long time ago. He asks her name, and she tells him to just call her slave, but he asks if she doesn't have a real name. She asks him to call her Atelier, and he introduces himself as Dennis. She asks him what she should do, and he tells her that she doesn't have to do absolutely anything. She can use the upstairs, or if she doesn't want to live there, you can go because you are now free. Atelier is shocked to hear that, but before he can do anything, his stomach growls loudly. Our boy starts preparing something for both of them and cooks a wonderful dish that fills the entire restaurant with an incredible aroma. She is enchanted by the delicious smell, and when Dennis finishes cooking, they sit down together to eat. The girl enjoys the food very much, and it makes her so happy that she begins to cry. Dennis thinks he doesn't know what she's been through, and that he won't ask her unless she wants to tell him. Atelier continues eating, but he notices that he's choking on his food, so he quickly helps him. For 2 days, Atelier helps Dennis to decorate the restaurant and even takes care of the cleaning, which makes Dennis happy. Eventually, they end up prepare everything, and Dennis names his new place the Adventurer's Restaurant. Dennis tells Tellerier that she will be their image girl, and she practices her customer service skills before the opening. For her, on the other hand, Dennis believes he has everything ready and is prepared for whatever a client can throw at them. He claims that it's going to make everyone obsessed with your kitchen, and they'll be so hooked that they'll eat 3 meals a day there. Every day, he expects customers to pay him a lot of money because he's left with nothing after spending everything on the restaurant and studio. But while he's lost in his thoughts, the first customer walks into the restaurant. But to both of their surprises, the client is wearing armor. Dennis quickly remembers reading in his guide to Part 2, Restaurant Management, that some adventurers prefer to keep their privacy, so decide to respect their limits and create a more comfortable atmosphere where they can enjoy their meal in peace. Dennis tells Tellier to serve water to his mysterious customer. As he hands over the menu, he wonders what the customer will order, since he is prepared to cook anything. However, the customer nervously asks for a small portion of rice and crystalline emoji. He wonders if this customer eats little, but the customer shakes his head. Then, Denny realizes they must be on a budget, so he's ordering the cheapest option. Our main character. He feels sympathy and asks if he likes spicy pork, to which the customer confirms. So Dennis decides to prepare it instead. However, the gentleman protests, mentioning that he doesn't have enough money to pay for such an expensive dish. Dennis claims that he can't serve an ordinary meal to the first customer in his restaurant, but then suddenly he realizes from her voice that the knight is actually a woman. His suspicion is confirmed when the knight takes off his helmet, revealing the face of a young woman who introduces herself as Henrietta. She explains her plight. She was recently kicked out of her adventuring party because they believe women are weak and only cause problems for the team. She expresses her frustration with this bias, and Dennis completely agrees with her. Henrietta mentions that she is only level 23. However, Dennis finds it impressive and believes that at that level, she is definitely qualified to be an adventurer. Henrietta then asks her if she has heard of the vice captain of the strongest group in the kingdom, the Silver Wing, who is a woman and is even considered a sword. Legendary Chinese. Dennis says he's heard of it, but finds it problematic. Henrietta explains that she hasn't been able to find any group that would accept her without having to hide her true identity, and this constant struggle has consumed all her savings. After a few minutes, Dennis serves her the dish he prepared, telling her she'll feel much better. After eating something, Henrietta doubts, asking if he is sure about giving her food, knowing that she cannot afford it. But Dennis tells her she can pay when she has money. Henrietta takes the first bite and is surprised by the incredible taste because he's never eaten anything so delicious in his entire life. He finishes the whole bowl in a matter of minutes, praising Dennis for his exceptional cooking skills. Our protagonist hopes he will become a regular at her restaurant, so she promises she will be, but only after joining a group and earn some money. Dennis wonders if he should ask his other clients if they know of any groups that need a Chinese sword, and Henriette is excited by the suggestion. Denny points out that it will be difficult to contact her if it arises any chance, so he hopes she will continue to stop by the restaurant from time to time, to which she agrees. Days later, we see a group of adventurous men eating at the restaurant and are completely impressed by the quality of the food. They also praise Atelier, congratulating Dennis for having such a helpful assistant. They consider this food as a good luck charm before going to the dungeon on his next mission. So Dennis realizes they're a group of adventurers. He asks them if they are looking for a swordsman, since he knows a female warrior, very skilled. They don't care about gender at all and hope she can start working with them soon. Dennis is surprised to find a suitable group for Henrietta so quickly, and they explain to him that team only lacked attack power, so this recommendation is like a gift from heaven. Later that, on the same day, Dennis informs Henrietta about the group he found for her, and she immediately agrees to join, which it leaves him surprised, as he believes she should be more careful before joining strangers. But she assures him that everything will be fine. Dennis decides to let her make the final decision and serves her food. Henrietta warmly thanks her. Before starting to eat, he says they'll have to earn a lot of money to be able to pay him properly, but Dennis reminds her not to talk to him with her mouth full. Henrietta then wonders what she should eat when she returns tomorrow. He finds it funny that she actually plans to make all her meals at his restaurant. After finishing his meal, he leaves with a big smile on his face, hoping to finally earn some money. After that, our protagonist continues to serve the clients all day long and is happy with the steady flow of work. At night, two girls arrive at the restaurant and he thinks they will be the last customers of the day. He hears them praising the restaurant, but then a of them mentions recent rumors about a dangerous group that has been recruiting lone female adventurers to take them deep into the dungeon and then assault them. The criminals move carefully to different towns after committing their crimes once or twice, making it difficult for authorities to catch him. Dennis finds the news alarming and begins to worry that it could be the same group that recommended Henrietta, which makes her very afraid for her safety. The next day, Henrietta finally meets his new group and introduces himself. The group leader introduces himself as Steele, a light swordsman, and the other members. They also share their names and skills. Steele tells him there's no need to be too formal with this group, as they prefer a relaxed atmosphere. They go out together, and as he follows you, Henri asks you what type of mission they are going to complete that day. This explains that it is only a simple collection mission and that they will enter the dungeon to collect some items. Henrietta asks exactly what they're going to collect, but Steele mentions that they will discuss the details once they arrive at the dungeon. She thinks she would have preferred to know the details, but doesn't want things to get awkward or seem too demanding on your first day, so you just follows. They soon enter the dungeon, and Henriette immediately demonstrates his courage by defeating several monsters that are cross his path. His teammates praise his skills, saying that it's a great help to have a sword. China is so strong on the team. Henrietta is genuinely happy that they trust her. In this way, thinking it's the first time they've experienced such acceptance and appreciation, the group decides to delve even deeper. In the dungeon, and Henrietta, remains optimistic, thinking that things could go well with this team. They meet with more monsters as they advance, and she takes care of all the fighting, while the other members of the group, they simply watch and offer words of encouragement, defeating every creature that crosses their path. Constant battles begin to affect her stamina, and she begins to feel exhausted. Instead of suggesting a break, her teammates tell her that her destination is just a few steps ahead. Despite barely being able to walk properly, he follows it deeper into the dungeon. They finally reach their destination, and he explains that the memory crystals that are in that area are the ones they were looking for. Henrietta, completely exhausted from the journey, collapses. Tiredness, so Steele orders the group's healer Marmok to cast recovery magic on him, and the healer approaches her, for which Henrietta thanks him in advance. However, instead of healing her, he casts a spell on her, paralysis leaving her unable to move. Henrietta realizes something is wrong and tries to reach for her sword, but Steele steps on his hand, preventing him from defending himself. Then Steele says that luckily for them, he's such an idiot that they had to cajole her a little to get her to let her guard down completely. The healer adds that Steele shouldn't call her an idiot, since thanks to her they are going to create new memories. Steele thinks that Chinese swords are the ideal target because they are not as clever as wise men or magicians, but they are quite attractive. Henrietta is given. He realizes that he can't stay like this and knows he needs to do something, but his paralyzed body refuses to obey. Steele says he'll let her go once she's entertained them for an hour, but before he leaves, they'll stun her again. So it will depend on luck whether someone rescues her or if the dungeon dies. Henry remembers the words of Dennis about being cautious when choosing a group and thinks that if she had been alert from the beginning, she would have noticed the warning signs. Henrietta screams desperately for help, pleading for someone to save her, but the criminals hold her down and tell her that no one is coming to rescue her inside the dungeon. After that, they start to take off her clothes while praising her body, but before they can do the unthinkable, they hear a strange noise echoing through the dungeon. They wonder if it could be another group, as that would complicate things. Style orders one of his men to investigate the source of the sound, but before he can do so, the subject flies against the wall of the dungeon by a strong attack. They soon notice what appears to be some kind of monster before them, but is actually a man with a skin mask. He orders Marmok to cast a seeking spell to find the weakness of the intruder, but when he tries to assess him, the spell fails completely. Marmok realizes that there is a huge level difference between them and that mysterious figure, meaning they stand no chance against him. Steele thinks that they haven't gone that far down the dungeon, so a monster of such power couldn't exist in the higher levels. But before he can process that information further, the masked man switches his blades to the side, blunt, and attacks him directly, knocking him out with a single devastating blow. The other members of the group tries to flee in terror, but the masked man pursues them mercilessly, knocking them down one by one with precise attacks. Henrietta watches in amazement, wondering who that person could be, and notices that his movements, they are like those of a chef who is very skilled at handling kitchen knives, but is so exhausted that he loses consciousness. The next day, Henrietta arrives at Dennis's restaurant and explains everything that happened to her. Henrietta mentions that when she regained consciousness, she was lying safely in the Adventurers Guild. She couldn't thank the mysterious man who saved her, and the members of the group who accused her were found unconscious and tied with rope outside the dungeon. The guild investigated the incident and discovered that the group was actually a well-known criminal gang and that they were all wanted for different crimes. And Rita reflects that the whole experience feels like a dream, and she acknowledges that this incident taught her the importance of being careful when choosing a group. Our protagonist takes part of the blame because she believes it is also her responsibility, since she recommended the group without thoroughly investigating their history. Henrietta doesn't blame him at all and appreciates his concern for her well-being, but her stomach starts growling with hunger. So Dennis asks her what she would like to eat. He mentions that he doesn't have any money yet, but Dennis tells him he can order anything he wants from the menu. Feeling brave, he orders the most expensive steak available, which leaves Dennis surprised. So she feels guilty and asks him to prepare the cheapest thing instead. Dennis says that she can't cancel an order once she's made it, and also invites Atelier to dinner with her. Suddenly, the two girls from earlier arrive at the restaurant, and Dennis asks them to pour themselves water, as Atelier is having dinner at the moment. They understand and comply with the request, while Dennis begins to prepare the expensive steak that Henrietta had ordered. After finishing cooking, he serves the perfectly prepared steak to Henrietta and Tellier, and both express their joy because it tastes delicious. Then the two girls ask Dennis why he didn't open the restaurant yesterday, mentioning that it is not right for regular customers like them if the place closes for 2 days. Followed without warning, Dennis explains that he simply had something important to attend to, and Henrietta this moment a bit suspicious. He looks at him closely, studying his physique and movements more carefully, and suddenly realizes that he he is the same person who saved her in the dungeon. But before she can say anything else or confront him, in this regard, another customer enters the restaurant, interrupting the moment, and Dennis welcomes him with a warm welcome. Some time later, at the restaurant, Henrietta is talking to Dennis, but she feels that he is not. Part 3. Really listening, which annoys her. Then Dennis asks her what she wants to order, so she asks for the wizard ramen. While cooking, he suddenly mentions his earlier concern about whether he should hide his gender when adventuring, and Rita is surprised that he has actually been paying attention to her. Dennis tells her that do what feels right because in the end she's just being herself and that's what makes her special. Dennis serves the food, but her words seem to leave a deep impact on him. Without doing much, she gets up and goes to the other room, surprising everyone. There he reflects on how people who make mistakes often, sometimes they end up being so afraid of failing again that they lose sight of who they really are. But instead of hiding behind fear, she realizes that it is better to be true to herself. Henrietta soon returns with her usual clothes and tells Tellier that it looks great on him. Henrietta sits back down at her table and starts to enjoy your delicious meal. He tells Dennis that his words really made him think and believes that the advice from an experienced chef carries special weight. Dennis is happy to hear that, but asks Henrietta is really serious about finding a new group. After all, she's been eating all her meals at his restaurant and hasn't even made the first payment yet. Henriette nervously admits that he's been trying find a group but has had no luck so far. He is also surprised that he has been keeping track of everything she owes him. She thought she didn't have to pay for that. However, Dennis reminds her that only the first food was free and he has to pay for the rest. Atelier also feels that Dennis is being a little mean, but just then they are interrupted by the sudden arrival of a customer. The customer takes a seat and starts looking at the menu while Dennis tries to guess if it's a boy or a girl. When Dennis asks if she's already knows what he's going to order, the customer responds by asking what's good. Dennis confidently says that everything is excellent. The young man then points out that this doesn't help much, since it's only natural for Dennis to like his own food. Our protagonist suggests a dish called Vitara Katsudon, but the customer doesn't feel like eating anything with rice. Henrietta also joins the conversation, recommending the pasta as she personally finds it very tasty, but he doesn't want anything so heavy. Then suggests another dish, but he is not in the mood for that either, which frustrates Dennis as he is running out of patience. Henrietta quickly stops Dennis by saying that he is just a teenager and that they usually have trouble making decisions. Atelier approaches the boy and suggests he order fried rice, but upon seeing them, the boy can't resist, so he decides to give it a try. Deans quickly prepares the dish using his level 99 skills. When the customer takes the first bite, his expression making it clear how much he's enjoying it. Dennis watches him closely and, while eating, he asks him if something is wrong. The boy seems confused, so Dennis explains that he saw him sigh before and thought maybe he wanted to talk to someone. The client says there's nothing in particular he wants to tell, and Dennis respects that by saying it's okay if he doesn't want to share. But then the young man suddenly starts talking about their problem. They say their problem is that everyone around them is too weak, which shocks them. Clearly, this guy has no filter. Dennis just pretends to agree, but the guy asks if he wants to listen more. Although Dennis is not very interested, the young man continues to say that the people around him have very narrow-minded. They only care about completing the mission at hand and making some money without ambition to improve or become a high-level group. Dennis looks at Henrietta and thinks that she doesn't even can make money, much less have breaths as high as the boys. But she feels that he is only being rude. The boy states that he refuses to hang out with unmotivated group members because he believes that being adventurer isn't about going to safe areas and fighting weak monsters. For him, it's about exploring the unknown. But when he shared this philosophy with his previous group, he was expelled. He says he wonders if his restaurant is somehow emitting marginalized Catran pheromones. The customer continues to explain his ideas. He is not interested in staying with small-minded people because one day he will join the Silver Wing group as the strongest wizard. Dennis advises him to be careful not to get so excited that he ends up staying alone. In the end, adventurers are only adventurers because of their groups. The boy replies that he will consider joining a group, but they can only keep up with him. He pays for his meal by telling Dennis to keep the change, but Dennis notices that he paid exactly what he cost the dish. As she leaves, she introduces herself as Vivia Strange and says she will try the fried rice again soon. Shrimp. A few days later, Vivia returns to the restaurant and waits for her order to be prepared. She announces that she found a new group and they're the strongest group in the area called Night Fog. Dennis congratulates them and Vivia. He says with confidence that someone like him is always in demand by high-level groups. Our PR asks him about the levels of her peers, as Vivia was very insistent on only working with strong members. But Vivia responds that levels can come later as long as someone has the motivation to improve. She states that yet. He has many advanced skills that just need to be put into practice and believes the group chose him for his potential future. Dennis is happy for him, and Vivia adds that at this rate he'll soon join the Silver Wing. Dennis serves him shrimp fried rice, and as Vivia eats, she wonders if she'll give him a cool nickname once he joins the wing. Silver. Dennis remembers that he used to have a nickname for the legendary fried rice. He thinks Vivia is a little self-centered, but admits that wanting self-improvement is not a bad thing. He believes the boy has the potential to become a great adventurer. If he succeeds, find a group that will train him well. Our question is about his first job, and Vivi explains that it's tomorrow. They're going to the 5th floor of the dungeon to collect rare minerals. Dennis uses his appraisal skill to verify. Vivia and Vika's level is only level 17, which is impressive for their age, but she knows that they usually requires level 30 or higher for that floor. Worried about Vivia's safety, Denise politely asks her if that won't be too deep for him, but Vivia replies that it will be fine, since the elite members of her group, they promise to give him their full support. Dennis thinks that although Vivi claims to have advanced abilities, she probably has only read them in books and believes that she can use them. Explains that a person's level is the quantification of the number and quality of skills you have acquired. Dennis adds that base stats increase with each level because the skills become more precise and are almost always active. Think about if Vivia really has acquired multiple advanced skills. It is strange that her level has not increased accordingly. Vivia feels that her group believes in her abilities, but Dennis still advises her to be careful. Vivia doesn't take it seriously, saying that Dennis will surely doesn't know anything about dungeons anyway, since he's clearly never been in one. Our protagonist reminds you that the last time he entered a dungeon, he went down to floor 37, and he thinks Vivia will be fine if he really goes with a group. High end. When Vivia leaves, she says she'll try the crab fried rice next time. The next day, Dennis and Adelaire are shopping, and Dennis thinks that by now Vivia must have reached the 5th floor. Asks if he should have stopped him, and Atelier hopes Vivia is safe. Suddenly, they hear a group of adventurers passing by, talking about Vivia and whether she's okay. One of them says it's too late to worry, but he admits that it was quite cruel of his boss to send him to the 5th floor just to see if he could get back on his own. Another suggests that this is simply their way of testing whether new recruits are worthy of joining them. Hearing this, Dennis immediately grabs them and pulls them aside, saying he wants to talk. They ask him if he realizes that they are members of the Night Fog group, and then they attack him, but Dennis easily defeats them. He then tells Telier that they'll have to close the restaurant for the day. She understands that he's going to look for Vivia, so she simply asks him to be careful. Meanwhile, Vivia is fleeing from some goblins inside the dungeon. She remembers how her party members abandoned her, telling her to find his own way back. As he continues to leave the dungeon, he suddenly becomes trapped by some vines. He tries free themselves, but realizes that they are bound with a spell, so they will need to use magic to break it. However, when he tries to use the spell, his mind goes blank, as he never practiced those spells that only he had read in books. He thought he had them all memorized, but now he's terrified that the goblins will get him, find him, and stab him to death. Just then, he feels someone approaching, and a girl suddenly appears and helps him hide in a nearby cave. Vivia thanks her for saving him and says it was thanks to her taught the steps to break the spell that managed to survive. He is impressed that she knows such ancient magic, and he admits that he wouldn't be alive if she hadn't been there. The girl tells him that it's still too early to feel safe because they first need to find a way to escape. He introduces himself as Vivia and asks her name, and she tells him her name is Cynthia. He asks if she got lost and ended up there. Cynthia explains that her group left her behind after she fell in the same trap as him. Vivia thinks that was horrible of them, but she says it's okay since she was never good at anything she tried and only caused trouble. Cynthia apologizes, thinking that he can feel attacked. CYN suggests waiting to see if Vivia's group will return to rescue them. Vivia tells her that she is in the same situation as her because no one is going to come to rescue him. He accepts that he was very selfish and that he never cares about others. That's why he fought with his group members. Vivia thinks he has a terrible personality, but Cynthia insists that that's not true. He reminds her that she knows nothing about him, and she replies that he doesn't know anything about her either. This makes Vivia realize that he'd never spoken to a stranger like that before, and that made him feel a little better. Cynthia was glad to hear it, but unfortunately, the goblins return, searching everywhere for Vivia. He realizes he doesn't have many options, so he decides to act as a decoy and distract all the goblins so she can escape. Cynthia refuses, saying she has no sense if he doesn't survive, but Vivia tells him that he would be dead by now if she hadn't saved him. She mentions that she is the first time he feels like this, as he has always lived selfishly. Vivia tells him to run while he attracts the attention of the goblins, and as he lunges, she tries to stop him, but she can't reach him in time. He jumps in front of the goblins, thinking it's okay to die while Cynthia can live. She uses a palm spell to hold back the goblins, but they easily break it and rush on him to finish him off. Suddenly, Dennis arrives and uses his abilities to create a large rock barrier that protects. Seeing his face covered with a paper bag, Vidya thinks he's some kind of monster and goes into panic, so Dennis tries to calm him down. Vidya eventually recognizes his voice and Dennis takes off his mask, saying that there's no point in using it anymore. He scolds Vidya for rushing so recklessly in front of the goblins and he says they have to get out of there quickly. But Vidya insists that they have to save the girl. She wonders if she's already escaped, but Dennis tells her that didn't see anyone on his way. However, Vidya thinks he might still be in the cavern. Dennis goes to check, but the only thing she finds is Cynthia's skeleton, leaving Vidya in a state of shock. A little later, they ask about her in the guild, and they learn that she was a 16-year-old mage who got separated from her group on the 5th floor 3 years ago. Later, Dennis and Vidya lay his remains to rest and make him a grave. Our protagonist mentions that he has heard that sometimes the spirits of adventurers who die in dungeons end up saving those who are still alive. Vidya tells Cynthia who will visit her again and promises to become a powerful magician to be able to save girls like her in the future. As he leaves, Dennis tries to cheer him up and offers to make some fried rice. He invites Vivi to join him, and he gladly accepts. He asks her not to get so depressed, saying that Sina won't be able to rest in peace like that. Vivia asks him to at least let it be. Sad for a while, but suddenly he feels Cynthia's spirit saying goodbye to him and thinks that she was a true magician who followed, living even after death. This was the end of the 3rd episode. Comment on the word part 44, knowing you've made it this far. Watch the next video on screen, subscribe, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, watching your videos until the last second helps the channel grow even more. Yeah.